Boldwood presents The Orphans of Berlin, written by Jina Bacarr and read by Polly Edsel and Laurel Lefko. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This performance is owned by Boldwood. Chapter 1. Château de Sainte-Lucie-les-Fleurs, outside Paris, late September 1942. Rachel. It's drizzling rain when the French police storm the chateau and arrest my two little sisters, dragging them outside, kicking and screaming. Leia's spectacles sliding down her nose, Tova's big white bow in her short hair soggy and droopy. Crouched behind high bushes, I watch in horror from my hiding place when they toss them into an enclosed black truck, what the locals call a panier à salade, salad basket. I can't move, unsure of what to do next. It's no secret the local gendarmes take orders from the Nazis. Somehow they found out we're Jewish refugees from Berlin, though we carry French identity cards. Forged, of course. My heart pounding, I can't stop my mind from racing through every possible outcome, every horrible thing they could do to my sisters. Torture? Beating? Starvation? Abuse? God, no, they're just children. My mind screams. I should have seen this coming. Last week we had a scare when the Gestapo blocked off streets in the village and rounded up anyone who looked remotely non-Aryan, stuffing them into trucks without even a slit to look through. A man tried to escape, and they shot him and left him in the street. We were terrified they'd question why we speak French with an accent, but we fooled the Gestapo, telling them we're from a small town near the Swiss border. They let us go. Not this time. I shudder when I think of the smug looks on the gendarmes' faces when they shoved my sisters into the truck, the glee in their eyes, knowing they got what they came for. Innocence they can parade in front of the Nazis to show their worth to the Germans and save their own skins. I feel a rush of fear that sends me into despair. If I run and beg the police to let my sisters go, they'll arrest me too. I draw my breath to keep my focus on saving them. I can expect no mercy. I know the drum roll of war drowned out the beating of their hearts years ago. I tug on the buttons of my sweater, my heart heavy with dread. It's my fault my sisters got arrested. I'm the oldest. I should know better. I was selfish, weak, and now I'm paying the price. Earlier I went in secret to meet the tall young man with the fierce look in his eyes. We rendezvoused in the gameskeeper's cottage on the chateau grounds. I was about to tell him my news when we heard the roar of a big truck, gears grinding. We ran outside and saw it racing toward the chateau, followed by an old French police car. We sneaked back to the main house, and by the time we got there, the gendarmes had rammed their way inside the chateau, shackling my sisters like animals. My love bade me to stay hidden. Then he was off, risking his own freedom to save them. I wrap my arms around my swollen middle. I'm careful to keep my condition hidden. I don't want to worry my sisters. I'm 19, and soon to be a mother. Leia is barely 16, her thin body not yet a woman's, and Tova is a rambunctious 13-year-old who jumps like a frog into a pond every time she sees a German. I can't imagine the fear and horror residing in their battered souls at the hands of the Nazis. My sisters depend upon me. It's all my fault because I dared to fall in love with a resistance fighter. I wasn't here to protect them, and now we're paying the price. What would Mutti and Papa say? I promised them that day at the train station in Berlin we'd never be separated, and now look what I've done. How many times have I held Leia and Tova tight, shivering, and praying we'd evade capture whenever the black truck rambled through the village, transporting Jews jammed shoulder to shoulder to the police station. And, if the rumours are true, to death camps. I wipe my eyes, my hot tears dissipated by the raindrops, but not my resolve. I'll fight the Nazis tooth and nail to get my sisters back. An anguished cry catches in my throat. Oh God, now they're bringing out Hélène, our governess, the pretty Polish girl with the bright red hair. Her dress is torn, her face bruised. What have they done to her? What kind of monster sends a gang of police thugs to arrest 3 young women? All I can do is watch from my hiding place, waiting for my man to return. His first instinct was to shoot his way into the chateau to rescue the girls. But not only is he outnumbered, my sisters could have been caught in the crossfire. Instead, he went around back to see if he could slip inside unnoticed. Then he'd have the element of surprise, evening up the odds. No, he said, shaking his head. The chateau is closed up tight. Still, he didn't give up. He made me promise to stay rooted to the spot while he checked the perimeter for Germans, hoping to scale up the trellis to the first floor and find an open window. Where is he? He's been gone 10, 15 minutes. Thunder rumbles overhead, mixing with the roar of 2 German motorcycles pulling up not far from where I'm hiding in the thick brush. In summer, the bushes boast beautiful pink roses, now turned a sad, ugly brown. 2 SS men confer with the French police officer, checking the truck. Then, with the clicking of heels and raised hands in salutes, they race off on their motorcycles with the truck following, and the police car bringing up the rear. They amble down the road, in the rain, taking with them their precious cargo, and killing my soul. My sisters are gone. Will I ever see them again? Their anguished cries echo in my head. How can I forget the gendarmes pinning their arms behind their backs? And then, the unthinkable. Tova kicking a policeman when he yanked her arm so hard it twisted at an odd angle. Then he slapped her. That got my blood going. Oh, the rage boiling in me that he dared to touch her. A child. An innocent child. Even crouched behind the high bush, I could see the reddening flush on her cheek, the fear in her eyes. And I could do nothing. I swear I will not let their cowardly deed go unpunished. I won't allow these barbarians to get away with hurting my sisters. I will come up with a plan, embrace the challenge to set my sisters free. I could never live with myself otherwise. How did this happen? We believed we were safe here in France. Then the rumble of war and the smell of blood spread over Europe like a dark cloud, thick as a saffron fog, hiding the Nazis' ugly deeds, leaving us in limbo and taking refuge in the countryside in an old chateau. Until today. I grit my teeth, my being shaken to the core. I suffer the pain of knowing an informer betrayed us. Then, as silent as a prayer, Wolf is beside me, his breath hot against my neck. They're taking your sisters and Hélène to the local police station, he says, his tone edgy. I'll gather my men right away, and we'll stage a raid. No. I lay my hand upon his arm. I've seen how ruthless they are. The sadistic cowards will kill my sisters without remorse if you try to break them free. No, we can't let them know we're onto them. It gives us an advantage, and buys us time. There must be another way. He heaves out a heavy breath. We could keep them under observation until they're transported to a detention camp, then attack the truck. Oh my God. I whisper, my hand to my throat. I listened to his plan, dangerous and with no guarantee it will work. But what choice do we have? He holds me tight, calming me down, but I can't stop shaking. Nothing will stop me from rescuing your sisters and Hélène, he whispers, his vow embracing my soul, his words a salve on my words. I want to believe you, and I do. But I'm afraid. Not for myself, but for Leia and Tova. My brave Rachel, you can't stay here. They'll come back looking for you. Let me protect you. How? I ask, deeply moved by his concern. I'll hide you in my camp. You'll be safe with my friends, all loyal members of the Resistance, while we work out a plan to save your sisters. I say nothing. He has no idea I carry his child. If he knew, he'd make me come with him. He's that way. Always has been since that first day we met when my sisters and I left Berlin with the American woman. Oh. An idea begins to spin in my brain, like a dreidel twirling round and round. Of course. Do I dare? I must go to Paris. I whisper in German, my brain so scrambled I forget about speaking French. I know someone who can help us. I'll come with you, Rachel. I shake my head. No, you're on the Gestapo's most wanted list. If you're caught... He holds me so tight I can't breathe. I won't let you go alone. I must. There's only one person who can help me rescue Leia and Tova, and Hélène. I clutch my chest, desperation filling me, driving me to go through with my crazy plan. Who? I attempt to smile. You remember Fraulein K. Alexander? There are other ways to fight than with a pistol, she said. A word and a bribe to the right person, with allegiance to no one, is often more effective. I'm convinced she can help us. He nods. Yeah, the American. She keeps a room at the Hotel Ritz. I feel a ripple of hope. She'll find a way to save my sisters and Hélène before the Gestapo sends them to a death camp, and they're lost to me forever.
Chapter 2. Paris, late September 1942. K. I walk from the Hotel Ritz to the movie theater with purpose, swiveling my head right, then left, making sure I'm not followed. My teeth chatter on this chilly late afternoon in spite of my fur-lined coat. Nerves. I still can't get used to this undercover business. I sigh. One more job, and I'm done. Then I'll never have to set foot in that damn hotel or see another Nazi again. I'm not a trained agent. I've never jumped out of an airplane or shot a pistol or learned to be a wireless operator. I don't even know Morse code. But I do know how to play bridge, order off the menu in flawless French, and how, at dinner parties, to name-drop the most influential people in Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Newport, and Palm Beach, where Mother and I spend summers. I never thought I'd be grateful for my debutante skills, but it's my position in society, according to my Uncle Archibald, that gives me a certain cachet on foreign soil. Then, America entered the war. Now I'm an enemy alien in the eyes of the Germans, known to the Gestapo as K. Alexander, daughter of Mrs. Herbert George Radwell Alexander, Philadelphia society's bluest blood, heiress to a candy fortune, and party girl, I imagine my official Nazi dossier reads, drinks too much, spends too much money on couture clothes and French perfume. I smile. If the secret police only knew why I indulge in perfume. My carefree, useless existence makes me the perfect candidate for this clandestine kind of work. Young, beautiful, so I'm told, and with a past that gives me nothing to live for. I came here on a journey to warm that cold, dead feeling that has been lying in my heart since a terrible, wintry night when my world crashed down around me. The nights are the hardest, when I'm alone. Then the pain returns. I got stuck in Paris when the Germans goose-stepped down the Champs-Élysées alongside their tanks, so I did a little spying for the Allies. Then, things got too hot. With America in the war, Kay, it's too dangerous for you to stay in Paris. A warning from my dear friend Gertrude von Arenbeck, Austrian journalist, bon vivant, and member of the Underground. She's meeting me later back at the Ritz. We received disturbing news about the 3 Landau sisters I brought to Paris from Germany. I have to get them out of France. There's a push from the Gestapo to find Jewish children hiding in France, and the French police aren't wasting any time rounding them up, child by child. I can't use the telephone in my hotel room to warn Hélène at the chateau where the girls are hiding. The phones are tapped by the Gestapo. Not to mention hotel informants among the staff, watching, waiting for a guest to give them suspicion to report them. I take a seat in the theater before the film starts. I don't pay attention to the name of the picture, starring a famous French blonde bombshell, Sylvie something or other. I'm too busy figuring out how my contact will pass along the information. Earlier, I found a ticket to a movie theater, the Gaumont Palace, in my coat pocket after I left the perfume shop on Rue Saint-Honoré. My drop-off point if I need to send a message to London, then Washington. Not original, but it works. Rich American, buying perfume to charm the occupiers is what I imagine the shop girls say to one another. I haven't been at this spying business long, but I've learned to pick up the subtleties of the game. For example, if an agent sees an upside-down horseshoe on a barn, it means there's a message for them. For me, it's when I see a distinct perfume in the window displayed with a red rose. Naomi's dream. That means I'm needed for a job. Whoever put that ticket in my coat pocket knows I plan to leave Paris tonight, and they're desperate enough to take a chance on me getting their information to the right people in London. I fidget in my seat, observing. An agent never makes the first move. Wait for the mark to come to you. Slow, painful minutes pass, while the theme music swells and the pretty blonde vamps it up on the silver screen, and the audience loves it. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I catch the silhouette of a young woman standing in the aisle. Slim, confident. She excuses herself as she makes her way past me in the narrow space between the rows of seats. I look up, and even in the dim lighting, I recognize the stunning girl in the black coat with the wide braided collar and felt hat from the perfume shop. I never learned her name. I wait for what seems like forever. Then she gets up, and I follow her to the powder room. She slips a folded-up piece of paper through the stall door. "Get these names to London," she whispers. "It's urgent." I admit to wonder how she knows I'm leaving France, but I know better than to ask. Then, with a strong whiff of a heady rose perfume, she's gone. I stuff the list of names into my coat pocket and don't let go of it until I get back to my hotel on Place Vendôme. I haven't stopped shaking since. Once I'm back in my room at the Ritz, my home away from home since 1937, I pull off my black kid gloves, then strip off my fur-lined coat, unbutton my blue dress down the front. Next, I take off my slip, heart pounding as I grab the tiny sewing kit provided by the hotel. I rip out the black satin inset in the seam in my girdle and get to work, pricking my fingers with the long needle. Mainline girls never flinch when they're in trouble, Kay. Mother. And her laundry list of platitudes that never cease. Ever since I was a little girl in pigtails, she's never let me forget I dance to a different beat because I'm a Philadelphia mainline blue blood, her words, not mine, and there are rules to follow. They smile, Kay, and for God's sake don't run to the nearest powder room. Walk like a queen. Like a queen on her way to the guillotine, if I'm caught. I rip off the extra thread with my teeth. Floppy stitches, but they'll have to do. I never learned anything remotely domestic at boarding school, but not knowing what I'm doing never stopped me. I got it into my head when I was a kid I had to prove to everyone I'm not a candy princess, but a normal girl. I've always been on the outside, looking in, wanting to belong. So I race into situations, shall we say, which is not always smart. Then I get hurt. Really hurt. Last time, I barely survived. This time, well, we'll find out, won't we? Finally, the list is invisible, sewn into my girdle. Then I grab what jewelry I can from the hidden cubbyhole in a built-in cupboard. I'm amazed at how many concealed places this hotel contains. Even secret rooms to hide refugees, or so I've heard. I smile. The list isn't the only thing I sew into my clothes. I grab 2 diamond rings, a necklace, a pearl choker set with emeralds. Goring would love to get his hands on that, and stuff them in the fur lining of my coat. Jewels I bought here in Paris before the war. Then I close it up with large stitches. I have to be ready for anything, including dealing on the black market for cash if my escape plan goes awry. What if the plane can't land? Strong winds? Not enough moonlight? Flak from enemy aircraft? My line of credit is in good standing, but there's no telling when the Germans will concoct a plan to block funds from my Swiss bank. So far, I've had no problem keeping up appearances at the Ritz to allay suspicion from my spying activities, but a girl can't be too careful. I run out of thread, so I cram a ruby and diamond necklace inside a small music box, a sentimental item I've cherished for years. I bought it in Berlin on a hot summer day, a day when I entered a world I'd only dreamed about, where the perfect family actually existed in my life, if only for a little while. A jealous arrow stung my heart, because I wanted that so much when I was a kid. And here it was. Yet I could only sigh and tuck that dream of having a loving family away, the memory tugging at me now as I stuff the music box into the side pocket of my coat, along with a handful of chocolate bars dropped by an RAF pilot with my family name on it. Radwell's French Chocolates of Philadelphia. He also dropped a bundle of rifles and pistols with my name definitely not on them. Guns for the brave souls in the underground fighting the Nazis, according to Gertrude. I wasn't offended when she didn't offer me a weapon. I have no idea how to load a pistol, much less fire it. Now, to get the hell out of here. I leave my hotel room, peeking to check no one is in the hallway, and lock the door. Then I race around the corner to the elevator and run smack into an arrogant SS officer on the prowl. "Bonsoir, mademoiselle. Have we met before?" We stand in front of the elevator, facing each other like 2 comics in a bad vaudeville skit who forgot their lines, neither of us willing to give up center stage. He grins. I scowl. His eyes are curious, his nose more so. He leans toward me and inhales. "Enchanting scent. French, of course." I don't need this tomcat sniffing me. Got to get rid of him. I return the favor, my nose wiggling. Stale beer? German, of course. You dare to insult an officer of the Reich? He demands in a sing-song, squeaky voice. I wouldn't dream of it. Lieutenant, is it? Captain, mademoiselle. He clicks his heels. I ignore his show of command. Instead, I jam my finger on the down button. I know the type. A weasel in uniform with a sense of entitlement because he wears black jackboots. I make my play. Now, if you'll excuse me, monsieur, I'm in a hurry, I answer in French, not daring to breathe, lest I pop my girdle. Then I turn my back to him. Wrong move. That was one insult too many for the Nazi. The SS officer snarls, then curses in German. I awakened a Teutonic sleeping tiger, and he's out for blood. Mine.
Chapter 3. Rachel. When I cross the Place Vendôme, I don't expect to see 2 Nazi sentries in grey-green uniforms and steel helmets standing stiff and rigid, guarding the entrance to the Hôtel Ritz. I haven't been to the city since the occupation began, more than 2 years ago. I'm shocked and disheartened at what I see. German officers sitting at the cafes, smoking. Their beady eyes appraising every young Frenchwoman who dares pass their table. Swastika flags flying from buildings like bloodied flags of surrender from a city I love. Cinemas splashed with welcoming signs in German for Nazi soldiers. Parisians riding bicycles or walking. No motorcars for private citizens. I want to turn and run. Disbelief pushing my spirit into a darkening cloud. A once proud city of light, where that light dims a little more each day of occupation. But I'm desperate, and I have nowhere else to turn. I must get a message to Kay Alexander. I feel confident she's still in the city. She remarked to me on her last visit to the chateau that the Germans weren't going to interfere with her mission to help us and others like us. That if she could put up with her mother's brash indignations, the Nazis couldn't be much worse. She was joking, of course, or so I thought, but when I looked into her eyes, I saw an exquisite woman dressed so elegantly, like the models in the magazine Die Junge Dame, but hiding a hurtful secret. If it wasn't for the tears shining in her blue eyes, I never would have believed she was in pain. Yet she always has a kind word, and chocolate dropped from the sky by the RAF, to comfort me. I swear she reads my mind when I stare off into space and think about how much I miss Mutti. She gives me a hug and tells me no one can take my mother's place. But if I have any questions now that I'm grown up, about boys, anything, she's here for me. That I shouldn't be embarrassed. I swear she blushes and lowers her eyes. I can't hide anything from her, especially how I feel about Wolf. That wasn't the first time she didn't hide her feelings from me. We have a bond, a strong tie formed years ago when I first met her in Berlin. I saw then she'd been hurt in the most awful way, and she needed to reclaim her soul from the devil. I think she's been working on that ever since. This striking brunette with a big laugh and the lightest blue eyes I've ever seen. I'll never forget how her eyes misted up when she promised my parents that day in Berlin at the Anhalter train station that we 3 sisters would never be separated. Her hand shaking, clasping her chest. Her Austrian friend Gertrude snapped photos of us 4 smiling but anxious. Kay kept her word, and we 3 stayed together. Until now. I came to Paris by train, paying for my ticket with the paper francs Hélène keeps in a blue glass jar in the kitchen cupboard for incidentals. The gendarmes didn't find it, their noses sniffing out a bottle of wine instead. Smashed glasses. A broken bottle on the terracotta tile floor. I ignore the light drizzle wetting the stone squares of the Place Vendôme. Few pedestrians dare to wander here, so I darted between the parked motorcars, praying no one would notice me. I pace up and down, then peek through my long bangs to see if the guards are watching me. Nope. Then why is my stomach rejecting the stale roll I choked down, sending hot bile into my throat? Why am I so afraid? What if the guard gets persnickety and questions the smeared ink on my French identity card where my thumbprint is? Then I'm done for. What will happen to my child? A child the Nazis won't hesitate to take from me when it's born. I'm nearly 6 months pregnant, I think, but so thin I can hide my swollen belly under my coat. Everyone in France is thin, with the shortage of food, and only the German generals are getting fat. I don't know what to do. I can't walk boldly up to the hotel entrance. Stone-faced, eyes moving like slits, the soldiers allow only German officers to pass through the revolving doors. Armed with rifles and bayonets, the sentries stand so still they don't seem human. I'll never get past them. I didn't think this through. I should have, but who knew about the sentries? So I have two choices. I can wait for the American mademoiselle to come out of the hotel, or catch her when she returns. I cling to that notion. I must. I dig my hands deeper into my coat pockets, cradle my palms over my belly, thinking. I feel the baby kick. But it's my wanting that makes it so. It's more like a fluttering. I long for the days that lighten my heart, days before the occupation when the kind American woman invited my sisters and me here for tea to celebrate my 16th birthday. She knew how much we missed our parents, and on my special day, she wanted to make us smile and forget for a while the emptiness that sat heavy in our hearts, like a lumpy vanilla pudding thickened with too much starch. Not on that day. Kay did everything she could to make us smile. I've never met anyone with a heart so eager to please. I felt like a film star, courted and fussed over by the Ritz staff, despite struggling to speak proper French, like I belonged here. Kay said not to worry, that my sisters and I were her special guests, that she hadn't given a birthday party since she was 16, when she made a lopsided 2-layer chocolate cake for her mother's special day. The society matron sniffed the cake and left for an evening with her lady friends, reminding Kay she could have ordered a perfect chocolate cake from Kaplan's. What started out as a dream of bonding with her mother ended up with Kay spending the evening alone in her room, blowing out candles, one by one. I was so taken by her honesty. I grabbed her hand and just held it. Leia and Tova hugged her, their melancholy faces making her cry. Then Kay insisted on no more sad stories and bade the waiter to bring us the works. Laughing and speaking the French and English we learned in Jewish school, we feasted on sweet raspberry tarts and vanilla pastry cream in the terrace garden with white tablecloths and fancy silverware. Flowers in big Chinese vases bloomed and waved at us with their petals like saucy chorus girls. We came again to the Ritz on a whimsical grey fall day and savoured hot chocolate-flavoured with orange zest and warm gingerbread, and buns oozing with cinnamon and butter. Never knowing that was the beginning of the end. Glorious days when Kay, she insisted we call her Kay instead of Mademoiselle Alexander, smiled at us with tenderness in her heart as we indulged in petit chocolat and licked our fingers, telling us the chocolate made back home in Philadelphia at her family's candy factory was like tasting heaven here on earth, Milky, sweet, and creamy dark, she said. Thick nougat and melty caramel. My sisters and I couldn't imagine having all the chocolate you wanted. A paradise, in our minds. Yes, we had sweets at home in Germany, and our favourites were the butterscotch hard candies Mutti kept in her cherished crystal candy dish. But chocolate? Every day? That was only for rich people. We found out how rich the American mademoiselle is when she showed us her room on the 4th floor of the Ritz. A tall fireplace, as well as elegant and feminine white furniture that looked as though it came from a palace. Our mouths dropped open when she told us every room in the hotel had its own bathroom. We oohed and ahed, touching the ivory cream silk and blue velvet furniture, and made funny faces in the huge mirror over the mantel. Yes, she's rich. Very rich to live at the Ritz. And to get us new identity cards on the black market declaring us not to be Jewish but French Catholics. More importantly, she cares about us, like we're her family. And now I've ruined everything she's done for us with my impulsiveness. My sisters are in the hands of the Nazis. I'll never understand why they want to destroy my people. We wish only to live a normal life, observe Shabbat by the warmth of lit candles, make music in our shop and let it rise to the heavens so God may know we haven't forgotten him. Hug our parents who do so much for us, and fall in love. I pace up and down the Place Vendôme, tap my fingers against my plain navy skirt, white blouse and long sweater under my coat, and then start humming to calm my nerves. A lullaby I wrote for Tova on Kristallnacht when she was 9. The words came from deep in my soul, breaking free like the shards of glass when the Nazis smashed the front window of our music shop, exploding around us when we crept downstairs to see what was happening. A night of broken glass. The night is cold, but my hand is warm. Take my hand, little one. Lay your head against my shoulder and sleep. Almost 4 years have passed, and now the whole world is at war. The Nazis fill their bellies like overstuffed geese, swallowing up the continent with their tanks and armies. Haven't they brought enough misery? How can arresting young Jewish girls be of any significance to them? All I can think about is better days, during the last summer of our innocence when we'd get together in the parlour of our home in Berlin. We filled the air with our music, each note sweet and pure. Me on piano singing, Leia strumming her guitar, her round spectacles sliding down her nose, and little Tova playing her violin like a busy honeybee, her short dark hair bouncing up and down, the starched white bow sitting like a crown upon her head. Mutti would work on the embroidery in her lap, looking up to read my lips, since she lost her hearing years ago, and Papa would film us with his prized movie camera. It didn't matter if there was no sound, he said, on the 9.5mm film. Each in their own way could hear us in their mind. Even Mutti. Everything changed in 1935 when I turned 12, and Hitler came up with his race laws barring Jews from doing almost everything. I did what I could to help Mutti. She never spoke of her deafness, but I know she struggled to make a normal life for us. Summer should have been a time of having fun with my sisters. Instead, shop windows were smeared in red paint with the words, "Dirty Jew," and gangs roamed the streets and warned us not to go inside, or they'd beat us up. Now I'm gripped with that same fear. And guilt. Guilt that I wasn't arrested with them. I draw back into the late afternoon shadow behind a parked motorcar, my mind scrambling. I quiver inside, a rising panic setting me off course, I dare not approach the German soldiers. Think, do something, find another way inside. How? Paris has changed since I last came to the Ritz. I keep humming to calm my nerves, daring to get closer to the entrance, hoping I can peek inside the hotel and, on the off chance, spot Kay in the foyer. I pull back when an elderly Frenchman, dressed in a long grey wool overcoat, colourful silk scarf and hat, shows up, complaining he's in a hurry to meet with Goering and his right-hand Gestapo man, poking his cane at the guards and jabbering that he's a duke and he always uses the front entrance. He demands to see the colonel in charge, and to my surprise, a guard races into the hotel. The Frenchman paces up and down until an officer comes out and they exchange words. No, Herr Geller hasn't arrived, and he sends him around the hotel to the Rue Cambon entrance. My heart leaps. Of course. I'd forgotten about the rear entrance. We used it when it was raining, and we visited the famous shop of Mademoiselle Chanel on Rue Cambon, though Kay prefers the fancy revolving door front entrance, insisting a young lady always makes an entrance where she can be seen. Are there German guards at the back door? I have to take that chance. I start to follow him when an old beat-up Renault cuts me off as it pulls up to the front of the hotel, with a large Gestapo man in a black trench coat and fedora hanging out the passenger window, bellowing about a flat tyre on his Citroën and yelling for them to help him out of this rat trap and not to forget his briefcase. The guards give him the Hitler salute with outstretched hands, then do as he asks. Herr Geller, I imagine, as he heads towards me. Then I see his face. My knees go weak and it's all I can do not to cry out. No, impossible. It's him. The Gestapo man from that day in Berlin so many years ago. I never knew his name. I can't believe it. The shock is so intense I can't move. He pushes me out of the way with an expletive so crude I want to kick him. But I'm no fool. Did he recognize me? No, I was a kid then. I'm a woman now. Besides, I'm not important to him. I use that to my advantage. Luckily for me, no one is about in the afternoon drizzle to give him an excuse to make an example of me for getting in his way. I keep to the meandering shadows, falling from the archways carved into the building facade, darting from one to the next to stay out of sight, a light mist wetting my cheeks. A pesky breeze blowing my long bangs into my eyes. I squint. I should be afraid, watching him shouting orders in German to the guards to stop anyone trying to leave the hotel. But I'm too desperate to think rationally. Then he starts scribbling on a newspaper and looking at his watch. No doubt in my mind it's the same Gestapo man. I can tell by his clipped accent and cold and calculating snarl he's from Berlin. I gather my courage and move closer to the hotel entrance. The two sentries look straight ahead at the large square, empty of pedestrians venturing out in the gloomy day. I remember when Kay brought us here, a wistful sigh in her voice when she explained how Napoleon erected the bronze column forged from over 1,000 enemy cannons, a sign of war that lingers among the upscale jewellery shops. Today it shimmers with raindrops glistening like cheap gems. The only vehicles I see are a line of Nazi-owned Mercedes and Citroëns parked in a precise row. I could hide between the motor cars again until the Gestapo man leaves, and then race toward the hotel rear entrance. But I don't want to make a sudden move. The man in the trench coat could turn on me in an instant. Seconds later I gasp with surprise when a big black touring Mercedes motorcar screeches to a halt, and two Nazi soldiers and an officer jump out. The SS man argues in German with the Gestapo man and has no idea I understand every word. I use the opportunity to move out of the shadows, my heart pounding when I hear them talking about arresting the last American woman on the list. The Gestapo man doesn't want to show his hand by barging through the entrance with SS men shouting behind him. The SS officer disagrees. My stomach plummets. American woman. God, does he mean Kay? I must be sure. Lips quivering, I hunch my shoulders and inch closer to the Gestapo man, bellowing and grunting like a circus ringmaster, his voice loud and clear in the empty square. He neither cares nor attempts to quell his anger. I hang on to every word. He orders the officer and his men to follow him to the Rue Cambon entrance, reminding him the Ritz is comprised of 2 buildings with a long corridor connecting them. He doesn't want to risk the American escaping. The SS officer balks. Unhappy with the Gestapo man's impudent orders, he has no intention of using a back entrance. With their backs to me, they argue like 2 bullies in a schoolyard, disagreeing on how to proceed with the arrest. The Gestapo man yells, and the SS officer demands he be in charge. He barely gives me a sneer when he turns and struts by me as he and his men enter the hotel on the Vendôme side. Fuming, the Gestapo man roars like a wild boar as he rips up his newspaper and tosses it to the wind, giving me a few seconds lead on him. I can't hesitate any longer. What if there are more guards? The words Herr Geller sent me are already forming on my lips in German as I race around to the back of the hotel. I stop, relieved. No guards. Good. I jam through the Rue Cambon entrance and run up the service backstairs, praying I get to Kay before the Gestapo man does.
Chapter 4. Kay. A debutante never sweats. Oh, really, Mother? I'd say if I were back in Philadelphia. Then again, I wouldn't have been hiding intelligence sewn into my tight black satin girdle with the SS breathing down my neck if I were back home. My garters are snapping against the bare skin of my thighs and, more shocking to my prim conservative mother, I'm in the company of a Nazi officer, most definitely a man not on her approved list of suitors. I grit my teeth. So why haven't I stopped sweating since I squeezed past the SS man blocking the hotel elevator? Simple. The tension sizzling between us borders on what we call back home a pickup, and the Nazi scare tactics I've seen used on the streets on anyone who gets in their way. He makes me nervous, even when he tries to be civil, introducing himself with a slight bow and click of his heels as Captain Horst Balder. By his sunburned face, I'd say he just arrived from the front. North Africa, I'd guess. Still, I have a bad feeling something is about to go down in an unpleasant way. The German swine is unmovable. He hasn't taken his eyes off me since I pressed the down button, insisting, no demanding, I have a cocktail with him. Pardon, monsieur, I say in French with a slight smile, but you must be tired after a long day of gobbling up countries. I assure you, mademoiselle, we officers of the SS are known for our stamina. He clicks his heels again. I doubt I could keep up with you. It's my duty, he boasts, jutting out his chin, to show mademoiselle how we Germans are improving life here in France. He leans closer to me, and I get a whiff of arrogance, along with an overly strong musk. I can get you nylons, whiskey, courtesy of the Reich. Can you get me fresh eggs? Bread for the poor of Paris? I dare to ask. Our troops must be fed first. The poor can... I know. Let them eat cake, I quip. But it goes over his head. He gives me a hard stare, then goes on and on about how I should be honored to drink with him. Why me? Perhaps he thinks I'm a mysterious Frenchwoman. Blue eyes, dark red lipstick, fair skin, and deep dark hair curling over my shoulders. So I act French. With my nose up in the air, I open my clutch and pull out my lip rouge. I feel the German's eyes on me, unnerving me, but I don't flinch. I'd never let him see me as a fragile female he can knock around, or worse, as someone who will fawn over him because he and his troops occupy the city. I refresh my lips with color, smacking them together loudly, and wait. I'm hoping he'll get tired of my indifference. I'm taller than he is in my high-heeled pumps, and cut a womanly figure in the right places. I'm proud to attest to a small waist and slender hips. To think I was once a pudgy teenager, my presence so distasteful to my mother that she shunned me for years. She never tucked me in at nights. That's what nannies are for, Kay. Read me a bedtime story, ditto, for nannies, or held me in her arms and dried my tears when I scraped my knee. A sad time that sits on the edge of my brain, waiting for me to push it over the cliff. But I can't. The trauma remains, like a thunderstorm that strikes when you least expect it and drenches you with regret. There's a part of me that's still that shy little girl. God help me. If I let her out now, I'm dead. I push her back down into that secret place in my soul, tap my black suede pump on the carpeting, and play with the flimsy veil on my hat, sniffing the scent of superiority emitting from this man. He's no different than the Nazis I've seen cavorting in the hotel's public rooms, some in civilian clothes since they're off duty, speaking French, showing off their Aryan good looks and bad manners, insisting they want to fit in. I turn, walk back toward my room, but he's 2 long strides ahead of me and cuts me off, laying his hand on my arm and making me wince. His dark eyebrows crossed in frustration in contrast to his white-toothed smile. He's the very picture of an arrogant Nazi babbling about how it's an honor to drink with an SS officer. I have to get rid of him. I try to pull away, conscious of how close he is to me and the secret list sewn into my girdle. He holds on to me for a long moment, letting me know who's in charge before letting me go. I want to kick him in the shins, but I've got too much to lose. I can't shake the queasiness the man evokes in me, especially when I head back to the long hallway and he's next to me, sniffing my perfume. I can't get enough of French perfume, mademoiselle. Especially yours. Naomi's dream. I'll buy you a bottle, I quip, but he doesn't get the message. Whatever I say, I can't get rid of him. I sigh. I wonder what my mother, the proper Millicent Radwell Alexander, would have said if she'd seen me earlier, slinking through the hotel, head down, avoiding Nazi officers, heading for the back bar. I can still hear in my head the buzz permeating the lobby, German and French in the air, forced female laughter as a late afternoon sun dropped below the horizon. All around the city, Parisians are grateful another day under the occupation had ended. For me, it was just beginning. I've changed since I ran away from my charmed socialite life 6 years ago. I've survived the occupation without getting caught because, according to my uncle, the Nazis are so by the book, they don't believe young and pretty women like you, Kay, are capable of learning their plans. But my luck ran out when this Boche attached himself to me. I have to dump him, but how? What if he gets fresh and forces himself on me at knife point? Nazi officers check their sidearms at the front kiosk, but that won't stop him if he lives by the merde touted by the party, that he's a member of the master race, and a woman is fair game for him to prove what a big man he is. It's happened to many French women, according to Gertrude. We met when I first came to Paris in the mid-1930s, a time when the city overflowed with literary readings, cabarets, and the air was filled with Gershwin and Cole Porter tunes. She's immune to the Nazis or any man's charm. a secret she keeps hidden under her brown and cedar-toned tweed suit, broad shoulder pads, and sensible walking shoes, her bright green eyes twinkling behind her monocle. She's never without it. Not my style. But we do have one thing in common. We both pine for lovers we can't have. I made mistakes with the man I love that I wish I hadn't, and now he won't talk to me. Gertrude, on the other hand, is in the eyes of the Reich what they call socially aberrant. Unlike if she were a man, she's in no danger since women aren't persecuted for their choice of a partner. Except the woman she loves doesn't know it. I've never seen Gertrude as happy as when she's with Hélène. I'll never forget the two of them sitting side by side at the American hospital, rolling bandages, their hands touching as they worked. Gertrude's eyes were shining, but the Polish girl had no idea what was going on in the Austrian's head, and I'll never tell. There are some things only time can change. I wish I could help her, but after the mess I made with my man, I wouldn't take my own advice. I'll always cherish the memory of his touch, and him folding me into his arms, running his hand through my hair, my head resting on his broad chest. I can't think about him now, though I want to. I know that Gertrude, as forthcoming as she is surprisingly shy in the ways of the heart. I admire her for her courage. Rather envious, too, of how she doesn't back away from who she is. She's a hero in my eyes, a hell of a writer, and an ally. It was Gertrude who connected me with the fledgling French underground after Paris fell to the Germans in June 1940. A day neither of us will ever forget. The hush over the city made us stop breathing. Even the perfume of gardenias that is Paris at twilight dissipated like holy smoke when the bitter wind from the east invaded the city. Since the American embassy formally closed in June 1941, I've been on my own, cut off from receiving assistance from my Uncle Archie or the State Department. Though an air of civility still reigns toward Americans, no one knows how long this cloak of neutrality will last. Gertrude's been my lifesaver. Anything I can do for her and her friends, I'm ready. Which is what got me into this mess. Hiding a hot list of names in my underwear. Double agents. I keep ignoring the German officer, grinding his teeth together as he insists I have a drink with him, hoping my aloofness sends him away. I have no doubt the Boche is trolling through the hotel looking for French pastry. By the stringent odor following him, I wouldn't be surprised if he's already gotten a taste with a willing mamselle on this floor and is looking for more. I let out a long sigh, pulling down the veil on my hat to shield my private thoughts from him. I shift my weight, wishing I could scratch the spot where I'm hiding the list of names. I don't. I must insist you have that drink with me, mademoiselle, he snarls, breathing heavy, taking my elbow with his gloved hand and giving me a hard squeeze this time to make sure I understand it's an order, not a request. He's tired of the game, and that doesn't bode well for me. Think of an excuse? Anything? I'm on my way to the American hospital to roll bandages, monsieur. I broaden my smile, though I quiver inside. Ja, Fräulein? Suspicion lurks in his eyes. At this hour? Yes, I lie. I hear the Red Cross delivered the fresh linens they so desperately need. The SS man sneers. Why waste your evening on men too sick to appreciate your stunning beauty, mademoiselle, when you have an officer of the Reich at your disposal? I fight to keep from lashing out as his eyes settle on me. Instead, I say, because they need me more than you do. I smile. I'll never forget the deep, dark pools questioning me like burning coals. Quite a contrast from his cropped blonde hair tinted by the desert sun. I head back to the elevator, which in true Ritz fashion is still making its way up to the 4th floor from the lobby like a half-filled balloon. I could run down the winding staircase, but this Nazi jerk would follow me and grab my rear before I got past the 3rd floor. He's keeping his distance. For now. I have the feeling he's retreated to plan his next attack on me. A game, to him, with my virtue as his objective. There's nothing more dangerous than a lonely German captain with time on his hands and a hunger in his belly for a willing mademoiselle. Before he can press me further, the elevator's grill door opens, and the scent of a heavy cinnamon spice mixed with cognac hits my nostrils. A tall, dapper Frenchman smiles when he sees me, mid-60s, with a practiced smile on that handsome face. He's wearing a long gray overcoat and scarf. In another era, he'd be adjusting his pompous white wig and rubbing himself against his brocade knickers, then dabbing snuff to his nose with a lace handkerchief. The Duc de Savaray. The man has a youthful swagger in spite of his years. "Ah, Kay, there you are," he says. "I was coming to see you." "You two are acquainted?" the German asks, surprised. "Ah, mais oui, mademoiselle and I go back a long way before the war." His sarcasm isn't lost on me. What's his game? I pull back, praying he won't try to kiss me on both cheeks. His bite is dangerous. He's like a snake in Duke's clothing. Louis Marcel Valbert is a man I once liked and trusted, a man I developed an affection for when I felt so alone, a man who deceived me and used me for his own gain. Chapter 5. K. Louis had me pegged right from the beginning as an easy mark. I was a naive, pretty American girl just arrived in Paris, lonely and with a broken heart. I was barely 20, but no longer the debutante of the season, a ruined woman. I fell for his paternal pat on the arm, his charm, his aristocratic sentiment to show me the sights. Oh, he showed me the sights, all right. A clever scheme he used on unsuspecting females to line his pockets. I still don't trust him, but I'm not about to out him now. I need him to distract the Nazi officer. Gertrude is waiting for me at the Rue Cambon entrance in her blue-gray motor car parked in the shadows on the narrow street. Then we'll return to the chateau to pick up the Landau sisters. The wily journalist bribed a low-ranking French official approved by the Nazis to borrow her motor car from the Germans since they confiscated all the vehicles. "I heard you left Paris, monsieur," I addressed the Duke. "When the shooting started." Rumor has it Louis fled to the south of France, and I assumed to Switzerland. I was wrong. "I had business in Lyon which required my attention." He grins, unashamed. "Exporting your usual cargo?" He ignores my innuendo, a reference to the sordid situation he trapped me in, though I let it pass. Paris is a dangerous city for any Frenchman, though I imagine, like other aristocrats, he's aligned himself with the Germans. "Captain, have you heard the latest news from the unoccupied zone?" the Duke asks, dripping with Gallic charm. "It would be my pleasure to buy an officer of the Reich a cocktail." The SS man snickers, insulted. "I prefer the company of a beautiful woman, monsieur." "I have news about the Eastern Front, monsieur. You'll want to hear." He mentions the name of a Nazi general and other gibberish that means nothing to me. "Yeah?" "Hold the elevator, Captain," the Duke says, "and I'll try to persuade Mademoiselle to join us." The Nazi thinks for a moment. His brain, weighing the odds, the Duke will have better luck than he did trying to convince me to have a drink with him, then steps inside the elevator. I love how that German sneer turns into a mischievous grin, the officer's sunburned, weathered face beaming as he wets his lips with his tongue. He's anticipating sugar in his coffee tonight. Louis takes me by the elbow, out of the captain's earshot, then whispers, "Get out of Paris, Kay. Now, you're in danger." "From you?" I raise a brow. Or is this one of your tricks? I know what you think of me, but take my advice and run down the service backstairs and don't look back. I'll keep the captain busy. If you want to help me, Louis, leave me alone. Hey, listen. The Gestapo have already arrested several Americans and sent the men to detention camps. He hesitates, then, I hear the women are next. I blink. Can it be true? No. They wouldn't dare arrest an American guest at the Ritz. The management wouldn't allow it. It would be bad for business. Yet I can't take that chance. What if Louis is right and I am in danger? He's risking his freedom if the captain figures out his game. I must get out of Paris and pick up the Landau sisters at the Château de Sainte-Lucie-des-Fleurs and get them to safety. I bought the dilapidated chateau years ago as a refuge for innocent children. Only the sisters and Hélène and a few servants remain there. We placed the other children with families, or got them out of France to Spain, then Lisbon. I promised the sisters' parents they'd stay together. I shall never forget the anguish on their faces as they kissed their children goodbye at the Berlin train station while I hustled them along, my own heart breaking at having suffered a similar loss. Now the sisters and I are on the move again. I'm determined to get them to America. But that will take more than luck, what with strict immigration laws and national security concerns making it almost impossible for Jewish refugees from Germany to enter the States. I've heard private relief organizations have had some success, so I'll try that route. First, I must escape this annoying SS officer. He's poking his head out of the elevator and looking for me. He's not letting me out of his sight. I take out a silver cigarette case from my clutch. I'm careful the captain doesn't see the British Isles engraving. Not a popular design with Hitler's henchmen, but a certain Englishman gifted me with this case, and holding it in my hand gives me courage. I take out a cigarette, fiddle with it, but I don't light it. Theater on my part. I'm stalling. I used to smoke back in my debutante days. Everybody did, but I find it distasteful now. I only have one left. But Gertrude smokes like a sailor on leave and finds cigarettes hard to get. Since women aren't given a ration card to buy tobacco, I procure what I can for her on the black market. Then I trade cigarettes and chocolate for intelligence. I tap the cigarette against the silver case, going over my plan. I'm headed back to the chateau after I dump this sleazy German Bluebeard, if the aristocrat can keep the captain busy while I bolt for the back stairs. There's no guarantee I'll reach the Rue Cambon exit. I'm about to make my move when the wily Duke whispers to the SS officer and then points to a room number, making the German's jaw drop, taking his attention away from me. The pounding and hustle and breathy sounds of someone in a hurry reaches my ears. I turn to look and see a young woman rounding the corner at the end of the hallway. I'm not the only one who hears her. A door opens, and a curious woman wearing a robe and hairnet peers out, then slams it shut. Louis and the captain pay no attention. The Nazi is getting antsy and stomps out of the elevator, yelling for me to "Macht, schnell!" when the grinding of steel and iron grates on my ears, and the captain turns and curses, ranting in guttural expletives, while the young woman pulls back into the shadows before I can see her face, and starts humming a tune. Curiosity takes me out of the situation, and I move toward her, drawn by the lovely melody, a lullaby. Oh God, I know that tune. Whispers of steam rising from a hissing train, then the clickety-clack of powerful wheels bring the scene back like a shot to my gut. Rachel, I whisper loudly. I glimpse her face when she steps forward, her shadow shivering across the floor, her finger to her lips, shushing me. Her face is pale, her dark hair twirling wildly around her face like spit curls. Her eyelids flutter. Her eyes, a sea of dark secrets. The despair in them dismays me. And there's something else, too. Fear. They arrested Leah and Tova. A harsh whisper so low only I can hear. And Hélène. Disbelief floods my brain as I look toward the elevator. Does the Duke know? Is this a setup? My blood runs cold in spite of the fur lining in my coat. A chill like I've never felt before. Dead, numb. They're just babies, my mind screams. I don't have to ask who did the disgusting.